Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. Earlier today, we were talking a lot about the academic case for Bitcoin, and now we're going to step one further, and we're going to talk about the value of doing this type of Bitcoin research. And so today, I'm really fortunate to be joined by three people who are actually building the research architecture around Bitcoin today. So Anais Kanimba is the director of the African Bitcoin Institute. It's a think tank that provides research, analysis, policy recommendations specifically for Africans. Bradley Rettler is a professor of philosophy and the director of the Bitcoin Research Institute at the University of Wyoming. He's also one of the three authors of the book Resistance Money, A Philosophical Case for Bitcoin, and a senior fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And Troy Cross is a professor of philosophy and humanities at Reed College, co-founder and chief editor of the Nakamoto Project, and a senior fellow at BPI as well. And my name is Ella Huff, and most relevant for this panel, I'm a junior fellow at the Cornell Brooks Tech Policy Institute. So thank you all for being here. It's an honor to have this chat. And I thought maybe, we just start right at the heart of this topic about research and turning it into impact and begin with what is the value of Bitcoin research? Why are we even doing this? And Bradley, I might turn it over to you to begin us as the director of the Bitcoin Research Institute.
Sure. I think that people look to journalists and academics for information about Bitcoin because they're outside of the industry and thus are seen as not having a profit motive that would muddy the waters with respect to motivations. And so it's incumbent on academic researchers to supply the relevant information to the public and to journalists. And so far, I don't think that those constituencies have gotten an accurate picture of Bitcoin from the information that they've been given. And so I think it's our job as people who understand Bitcoin and care about it to provide them with that information.
Certainly. And Anais, how about for you? What is the value of Bitcoin research?
I think it's very important for people to understand how Bitcoin helps people and how it's used. And I think we've been seeing a lot of theoretical discussion on Bitcoin, but being able to demonstrate the adoption of Bitcoin in real life from real empirical studies and not just kind of ideas is really important, and specifically in the context of Africa, where we've seen a lot of development and use of Bitcoin in a way that you don't necessarily see in the West. And so for us at the Bitcoin Africa Institute, we really want to be able to shape the narrative and help people understand how Bitcoin is actually used by the everyday people. And that story is missing. And it has to be done, of course, in an independent way, like Bradley said, from a perspective of not somebody who's trying to push the Bitcoin, but for people to understand, from a perspective, people need to understand how Bitcoin can actually help and how it's used. And so this is where I think Bitcoin research is really important in this time and age right now.
Yeah, yeah. And Troy, at the Nakamoto Project, you do similar work as Anais, but for you, what's the value of Bitcoin research, both in your, work as a professor, but as well at the Nakamoto Project and BPI?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, Bitcoin is just a phenomenon that's changing the world, and it challenges a lot of existing theories. And the primary value of the research is just understanding reality. What is the world that we are living in, and what is it going to look like in the future? So just like your most basic desire to know and understand is the value of the research. And what's interesting about Bitcoin is that uh, merely the desire to know uh, kind of gets you pigeonholed as a shill or an advocate or a critic. And so it's really hard to just understand what it's actually doing, as Anna said, because some people are going to get rich if the story is good, and other people are going to lose reputation points if it does succeed. So uh, the 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 simple act of curiosity is difficult when everybody is bought in or bought into to Bitcoin hate. Uh, so I think that's the kind of profound and rebellious act It's simply being curious and desiring to know and using your disciplinary expertise to understand a phenomenon that, whether you like it or dislike it, is impacting reality across a number of dimensions.
And Anais, maybe on this note of, the simple act of curiosity being difficult, where do you see research institutions most overlapping in mission, and where do you think they intentionally diverge?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, I'm really excited to see the growth of different research institutions coming up because it demonstrates kind of this curiosity of people wanting to understand. And so where I see commonality is being able to tell the stories again, being able to make people understand, make it tangible, and to see the use of what it was meant. And each institute is looking at different angle, different dimension, and each dimension deserves a little bit of deeper insight. And it goes back to the usability of Bitcoin and where it's success, when it's not successful, and and allow people to understand the challenge there. So these challenges can either be fixed or put people in a perspective where they have to rethink and reshape their thinking behind it. And so, you'll see that with the work they're doing at the Bitcoin Policy Institute in the United States is really geared toward a place where you have a lot of information already about Bitcoin. And then what do you do with it from a policy perspective? How do you educate policymakers on this in the United States, knowing that the United States is a leader in terms of policy around the world? And you look at the work that Africa Bitcoin is doing, our environment is a bit different. We don't have that empirical research to begin with. Those stories are not there. The studies are not there to base policy as forward as they are doing in the United States or in the United Kingdom, for instance. So our work is really to go back to the basis, and start gathering this information, start looking at all these individuals who are working in different aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem, looking at the challenges that they're solving, and being able to demonstrate that to I think from an academic perspective, but also to the broader community. And from that perspective, from this evidence that we can gather, then we can start having this type of discussion perhaps they're having in other places around the world. So I think these institutions are looking at their specific environment and the specific need that they have to serve. But the main goal that we are working toward to is helping people understand this and making it tangible, understanding what it makes, understanding how it makes sense to us, but also to the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great context. And thank you all for establishing the why of Bitcoin research and now digging more into the how. Troy, you spend a lot of time connecting researchers across countries, disciplines, institutions. What is perhaps the most valuable type of collaboration that you wish happened more often? And what boundaries do we need to push so that students could actually contribute?
That's a great question. Yeah, I've found uh, disciplinary boundaries to be challenging. Uh, I would say, yeah, stepping back, Bitcoin touches so many disciplines. It's a phenomenon that you think you understand, say on the economic side, but you don't understand its impact on the energy side or on the human rights side. Uh, I got pulled into the energy debates, and I very quickly learned that there was a disconnect between the industry of people actually doing Bitcoin mining or even building new things in the energy world and the world of academia. And uh, I was talking to both sides of that uh, divide, and it just informing people about each other and introducing them to each other. And I was amazed that they didn't know more about each other. We had sort of a premier researcher in the energy field who didn't know that Bitcoin's issuance halves every 4 years, but was like saying lots of negative things about it in the New York Times based on it sort of growing forever. Uh, and so it's just as simple as, hey, do you know about the halving? The very smart person, but just not informed about Bitcoin. And I think that's rampant throughout the academic space. And also, industry moves very, very fast. the entrepreneurs are way ahead of the academics, um, in part because they have data that the academics don't have. My research partner, Margot Paez, uh, and I gathered data from Bitcoin mining companies, and it was extremely hard to do. We had to jump through legal hoops. We had to persuade people we wouldn't twist their data or reveal it. Uh, Given how difficult it was for us to find the data, I don't blame the academics for being out of touch. Uh, they just don't have any data, so they're left in an echo chamber. Yeah, most valuable thing I discovered as an academic was that if you're studying some part of the real world, you got to get out there in the part of the real world that you're studying, and talk to the people who are at the forefront of it. On the flip side, entrepreneurs are always selling, and so you can't really trust them. They always have a pitch deck full of promises that are designed to raise money from VCs, and so you've got this dual problem of academics being uninformed and lacking data, and also being trapped in a kind of ideological silos, and real world entrepreneurs being uh, tight with their data but big on promises. And so I think there's a real role for students to step into this gap. Like, you might think I'm just a student, well, talk to people. You will be surprised who will talk to you. I got my entire Bitcoin energy education through people reaching out to me or me reaching out to them on Twitter. And you can actually make some of these. You can actually cross some of these divides.
Oh, that's nice. And so, Brad, Troy was just mentioning maybe a lack of data sets or a formal way to perhaps find good resources. And I'm curious, as the director of an institute, how do you evaluate what good Bitcoin research looks like and help your students do good Bitcoin research? Are there any standards or methodologies that you think we should start adopting?
It's nice to be a philosopher at this time because we don't need data. We just need our own thoughts and some principles and some arguments. So it almost had to be maybe philosophers that broke ground in this academic Bitcoin
Yeah.
work. I'm not sure about general principles or methodologies or approaches. Bitcoin is an applied topic, and as Troy mentioned, it crosses disciplinary boundaries and touches on law, economics, climate science, computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, all these other fields. And each of these fields have their own methodologies and their own disciplinary trainings. And you can become an expert in them and spend, 4 years of an undergrad degree and then 6, 7, 8 years in graduate work to become really good at it. And then once you have those disciplinary chops, you can say, what I'm really interested in is Bitcoin, and I want to take all that stuff and figure out how I can apply it to Bitcoin. Um, so I think it's important to, on the one hand, have those background abilities to be able to apply to your Bitcoin work. On the other hand, you got to understand Bitcoin. You can't just be off in computer science land and not know how Bitcoin is working out in the real world. You can't just be in an economics department and doing that kind of stuff and not understand the human rights side of things or how the protocol works. So I think far too many people are on one side or the other. They love Bitcoin, but they don't actually know that much about economics. They only think they do because they know Bitcoin economics. On the other hand, you've got economists who think they understand Bitcoin and can apply their work to Bitcoin, and they don't because they're missing some key aspect of Bitcoin, perhaps that about the protocol or about its actual use in the real world. So I think it's important to get these skills and then meet with other people who understand Bitcoin and make sure that you're applying your skills correctly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I think now might be fun to enter a bit of a lightning round. So I'll ask you all this question, but Anais, beginning with you, what is a skill, so just one skill, that you think would make a student unstoppable when they're doing Bitcoin research?
Good question. I think it would be being able to understand the context in which Bitcoin is being applied. And so that skill, how is it? It's more like taking Bitcoin out of the picture, but seeing Bitcoin as a solution and what solution it could provide, or understanding the challenges, the environment, and then seeing where Bitcoin can come in. So it's more of like a taking step back in terms of understanding the environment, the context that you're looking at and you're researching, and seeing where Bitcoin could fit as a solution. So I don't know if it's a straight one word thing, but I would say like that skills of kind of taking a step back, looking at the context before you kind of get into just writing about Bitcoin or researching about Bitcoin and in specific singular aspect.
Yeah. And Troy, how about for you? What would that one skill be?
Well, I want to echo Brad and, say that there's no shortcut to your disciplinary chops.
Yeah.
Uh, that's true. However, the thing that I wish I knew when I was doing philosophy, because I think it would have even worked in philosophy, is just to be fearless in asking people questions and asking for help, uh, because that's what it accelerated my own learning curve tremendously. I think learning about Bitcoin has been the steepest learning curve of my life, and I'm 54. And normally that happens in your like 20s. And it was exclusively because I realized that I don't have to go to the library to learn something, but I can talk to people. I know that's may just sound obvious to some people, but to me, it was like a real revelation. And of course, when you talk to people, you need to provide some kind of value to them as well. They have to be willing to give you their time, and so you need to give them something back. But I wish I had known that and worked on that side of my life, decades ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brad, how about for you?
I'm going to cheat and say two.
Okay.
I think curiosity and flexibility. So
Okay.
you gotta want to figure out the truth and know what the truth is and have that drive,
Yeah.
but then also be willing to change your mind when you get new evidence or talk to new people.
Yeah.
And I think far too few people have the flexibility.
And Troy, you sort of just touched on this, but what is the value of being wrong in research or, discovering something you didn't initially expect to find?
Uh, well, that's what research is all about, is finding out that you're wrong. I was amazed to see this former Nobel Prize winning economist. Well, I guess he's still the Nobel Prize winning economist, but uh, um, is it Fama at Chicago say that he hopes that Bitcoin fails because it would mean that all of monetary theory is wrong. And I was like, wait, what? No, you want monetary theory to be shown to be wrong. You want to be surprised by reality. Imagine a physicist saying they wanted Newtonian mechanics to be true, and they were just hoping that this two-slit experiment, was wrong, or measurements of the planets were wrong. Like that's crazy. Uh, Science is all about learning that you're wrong. Uh, I'll give you one example for us, and I know this is lightning round, but at the Nakamoto Project 2 years ago, we tested people's political ideology and Bitcoin ownership, and we fully expected to find a large skew in the rightward direction, given what we were encountering in the media, in DC, and on Twitter. And we found the opposite, that it was a statistical non-factor. And that shocked us. And that created a story and interest for everybody, actually. And then we were like, how did we get here? Why did we have that opinion? And what does it mean that we were wrong? And it led to a whole bunch of other stuff. Really exciting. I hope I get surprised. Otherwise, I'm bored.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe just to last question, what is one thing for each of you that you think a student could do today to begin Bitcoin research or begin kind of thinking about this and contributing? And Anais, maybe we'll start with you.
I would say it's not to be afraid, not to be afraid of the unknown, not to be afraid to get out of the space that you're in, whether you're coming from a computer science background, ask questions on what it means from an economic background, ask questions from what it means from a philosophical background. So not to be afraid to begin in wanting to engage, and not to take the noise in, but allow yourself to keep on being interested and curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brad, how about for you? What's one thing a student could do to start advancing Bitcoin research?
I agree with Anais. Also, I think writing. So if you think you have ideas, it's easy to think them in your head and not subject them to others or even to having to formulate them precisely. So writing something down and then, reading it a week later with a critical eye, can really help your intellectual development.
Yes. And Troy, to close us out.
Well, those were both great answers, and I would also say read the book that Brad wrote. Oh, I don't know
Yes.
if it's going to
Yeah.
Resistance Money. I think it's a great guide to starting out. I think what you start out with is important, and if you haven't read widely on Bitcoin, that's a really nice overview that will give you a place to dive in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Anais, you brought up the unknown, and I think studying Bitcoin definitely forces you to confront everything you thought you knew about the world and everything you haven't questioned yet. But that's kind of the beauty of Bitcoin research is that you're not just observing these unknowns, but you get to be an active participant in helping define it. And so I hope for all the students that are watching that it's very empowering as you leave and think about the next steps inside and outside of school. But I wanted to thank you all, Anais, Brad, and Troy, for your time and all the knowledge that you shared with us today and every day in Bitcoin, and for all you do around the world. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Ella.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ella.